All right, thank you for having a seat. My name is David Borden. I'm the chairman of the Dogfish Board. We have circulated a draft agenda. Are there any changes, additions, deletions to the agenda? If not, we'll take the items in the order that they appear. We had the proceedings from February 2014. Are there any changes to those proceedings, additions, deletions, any objections to approving them as prepared? No objections, they stand approved. Public comments, we did not have anyone sign up to comment, but I'll ask, is there anyone in the audience who wants to address the Commission on issues that do not appear on the agenda? No hands up. Update on the excuse me, I'm on the wrong issue here. Review of the 2016 specifications. We got two reports here, one by the Mid-Atlantic Council on the Mid-Atlantic Council actions, the second on the New England Council action. So, Jason, will you please provide the board with a quick summary of the actions by the Mid-Atlantic? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sorry for that delay. I'm going to quickly review some fishery performance items and then what the councils took on action for 2016 to 2018 spiny dogfish specifications. The council set up an advisory panel fishery performance report several years ago. The advisory panel meets, gives some input on the recent fishery performance as they go through. The biggest thing that we have gotten and keep getting from them is a key determinant of the fishery are markets and price. And their kind of goal for the fishery is to maintain stability in both and slowly grow it. I think that's the overriding theme we keep getting with it. You know, they say, you know, even though we haven't been catching the quota, there's no problem catching the trip limit. Over the years, sometimes processors do put in some days restrictions that limit catch. But again, the theme that they really keep focusing on is that, you know, they're looking to grow this fishery slowly, not quickly, and looking to maintain stability. And that's really the key thing. We do get some input every year on different regions wanting some changes to trip limits. As soon as that comes up, we also get input on, keep in mind that if you change the trip limits in one, you know, overall, it's going to have different impacts in different regions. And while it may help out one region, it may shut another fishery down because of the dynamics of the fishery as far as the trip limits go. So neither one of the councils took any action on changing the trip limits, which would just leave the federal trip limit status quo. We do get some input that some of the NIMS information on exports and what kind of products are exported there's some lack of clarity there. They wanted a bit more information on that. The name change issue keeps coming up. We did explore this with FDA a bit, but beyond the two currently allowed names, spiny dogfish shark and Cape shark, additional name changes through FDA appear unlikely to occur. So the blue line are spiny dogfish catches from the current fishing year, and the fishing year is May 1 through the following April. The orange line is what the landings were the previous year. So the red line at the top is the quota. The quota was the commercial quota. Commercial quota was approximately the same the year before in the orange line. So you know you can see that they're catching roughly less than a little less than half the quota basically. And it looks like this year we'll end up about the same or maybe a little bit lower than the previous fishing year. So the council, I think you guys probably know the council process. Things go through the SSC, which are pretty binding for the council. We had the Science Center, Paul Rago, who's now retired, doing an assessment update. The first take on that assessment update basically led to about a 50% reduction in the commercial quota. Once all the discards come out, Canadian catch comes out, once all those things are taken care of, the end result was about a 50% reduction in the commercial quota. The council, Mid-Atlantic Council, moved forward with ABCs based on that, but also asked the Science Center to kind of take another look at things, which they did. 2014, we had a missing data point. The survey vessel had mechanical issues, and the survey is basically looking at 3-year moving averages from the survey data is kind of the key driver there. So this year we had 2013 and 2015, but no 2014. So with a 3-year average, it's going to react pretty quickly to changes anyway. I think 2012 was a super high data point in the survey. You lost that very high data point and just relying on 2013 and 2015, and we had a substantial drop in the estimated biomass that then trickles down through the quotas. So when they went back and took another look at it, about ways to smooth the data and account for that missing year. Paul Rago, he's been working with Kalman filters as a way to do some smoothing and averaging with this assessment for quite some time. He did that along with a couple other options. Our SSC reviewed those options and said, of what's available now, and based on their understanding of the performance of those smoothing and averaging, they decided the Kalman filter was the best way to go in terms of how it behaved. So these are the biomasses that resulted from some of the different smoothing options, and the key thing to see here is that the current method, or the then current method, which was a 3-year moving average, versus the Kalman filter, the median biomass is a good bit higher with the Kalman filter. And again, it's not reacting quite so fast to the downtrend as the 3-year average, which was really a 2-year moving average because we didn't have any 2014 data. While for right now, the Kalman filter provides a higher biomass and therefore a higher catch. When you look at the whole time series, the Kalman results in the lowest average annual quotas. And basically, the Kalman, when it sees a survey point that has a lot of uncertainty, it's down-weighting those points. And with dogfish in the survey, the highest values have the highest uncertainty. It's a very strong relationship. And so those high values are getting down-weighted in importance by the Kalman filter. And so you can imagine it's basically kind of going to be a slow up, medium down kind of way to proceed. If it sees a high value with high uncertainty, it's going to react to that slowly. A low value with low uncertainty, and that's how things tend to be paired, it's going to react to that fairly quickly. So the SSC sometime later this year is going to take another look at it, kind of step back. Are there other smoothing options that may be more appropriate? I'm not exactly sure when that's occur, but they did indicate that they want to take another look at it this year. It won't be at the March meeting, but sometime after. And these are just kind of all the specifications. The bottom numbers that are circled are how things work out. And again, instead of going from 50 million pounds to 25 million pounds, you're more going from 50 million pounds to about 40 million pounds, give or take, over the course of 3 years. So that's where the council ended up, and I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Questions for Jason? Dan.
Jason, thank you. Can you just describe how many years this filtering process will have to be used given the missing data point?
Well, the survey has always used a smoothing, right? And it had been using 3 years. And I think the SSC likes the performance of the Kalman filter better as a smoothing option than just a basic 3-year or some of the other options. So I think that absent another smoothing option that the SSC decides is better, this could be forever it would be used. I think it will really depend on either an assessment or the SSC evaluation of what's the best way to kind of do some multi-year averaging.
Other questions for Jason? If not, we'll move on with the next item, which is a report on the New England Council. Ashton?
No presentation necessary. The New England Fisheries Management Council approved the same specifications as the MID.
Okay. In preparation for this, given the fact that both councils adopted this unanimously, I think it was, and anyone can correct that if I misstate it, I asked the staff to prepare a memo, not a memo, but a motion that would do the same thing, and put it up just for discussion. If someone cares to make that as a motion, I'll open the board for discussion. Have you got the motion? Yes. So a draft motion is on the table. Any of the Emerson, Hasbrook made the motion. Eric Reed seconded the motion. Discussion on the motion. Let me ask this. Is there anyone at the table that is opposed to the motion? No opposition. The motion is adopted by unanimous agreement. Okay, so the second issue is,
if you could, since we need the motion read into the record.
Okay.
Please.
All right. So the motion is to adopt the Spiny Dogfish 2016 commercial quota of 40,360,761 pounds, which is consistent with the commercial quota recommended to NOAA Fisheries by the Mid-Atlantic and New England Fishery Management Councils, motioned by Mr. Hasbrook, seconded by Mr. Reed. No further discussion? Yes, Peter Burns.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment. I just want to recognize that NOAA Fisheries is still in rulemaking on this, and we recognize that this is consistent with what the councils have recommended. But I'll be abstaining on this because we're still in the rulemaking process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Any further discussion? Any objections to approving this motion as presented? No objections. The motion stands approved. The second issue is the two councils took no action on the trip limits, and that's one of the issues that can be considered at this point. And just so everyone is clear, we have a system in terms of the management system. We have two slightly different management systems that operate. In the Mid-Atlantic, we have a quota system, a regional quota system with state shares. The states manage those shares. Any of the fishermen in that region that have federal permits and fish in federal waters are bound by the federal regulations and trip limit. When they fish without their federal license in state waters, they're bound by whatever the state water regulations are. In the New England area, we do not have a state quota system. What we have is a regional quota system, and therefore the states basically adopt a trip limit for state waters that complements the trip limit in federal waters. So let me just open it up. Does anyone want to suggest a change in the trip limit? Eric Reed.
I can make a motion to that effect, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you. I move to adopt a 6,000-pound trip limit on spiny dogfish for fishing year 2016 to only be consistent with compatible action by NOAA in federal waters. And I have some rationale if I can get a second.
Is there a second? Richie White? Well, wait. Eric, have you got that in writing?
Do I have it in writing?
Yeah. Eric, we'll just make sure we get the motion up on the board. And then I'll come back to you, Eric, and you can describe why.
You're missing the compatible with NOAA.
It's not. Eric, is it, let me just ask this from the chair's intent. The 6,000-pound trip limit applies in federal waters, right?
You have to be consistent with NOAA's.
Okay, but not just the northern area. In other words,
No, I'd like to see it coastwide.
yeah. Okay.
Can I have this backed up?
Eric, would you like to describe this? Why you want to propose this, please?
Well, there's more than a few reasons for it. One is we're underfishing. Currently, we're underfishing the resource.
Microphone, Eric, if you could pull
It's
it
on,
up, please.
Sorry. Okay, currently we're underfishing the resource. We're not catching current or the proposed ABC. As far as the market goes, we need to gradually increase the trip limit to methodically promote full market potential and the utilization of the resource. We also need to reduce regulatory discards. We need to promote economies of scale in this fishery. It's a cheap fish, and we need to take advantage of economies of scale in order to make it work for everybody. And a higher trip limit would encourage more participation in the fishery, which is certainly warranted in this case. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so I'll open the discussion to the board. Comments on the motion? Anyone? Anyone care to comment on the motion? No. Mike?
So this would only, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this would only happen in the event that NOAA also establishes 6,000-pound limits for all federal waters, correct?
Okay, other comments on it? Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman?
I'm not seeing a lot of hands. Doug, you got your hand up?
I have a comment, but I think Lewis still had a follow-up question.
Oh, excuse me, Mike.
I was just clarifying. I wanted to be, I just wanted an answer to what, I'm reading it again now and seeing that I think that's the intent, that the 6,000-pound limit would apply to federal waters as well, not just the state waters in the northern region. So I'd speak in support of this. I have advocated at the council level for the last few years for increases in federal waters trip limits. However, I didn't use Mr. Reed's approach, which is a subtle approach. I doubled limits and tripled limits, and it wasn't going to fly. But I think this stepwise approach to trying to achieve a better harvest of the resource is a good thing, and I'll support the motion. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I just add from my own personal perspective, as everyone knows, I have advocated higher trip limits on dogfish, but I would point out that the motion that Eric Reed is making is entirely consistent with the advice that Jason gave us from the industry. Don't do anything radical, just kind of slowly ratchet up the catch so that the market can adjust to it. Back to Doug Grout, please.
Yeah, I just want to say that I support this motion. Last year we did try to get a 1,000-pound increase in the trip limit. The information we get from our fishermen is that given the low value of dogfish, to be able to make this a viable trip, having somewhere between a 6,000 and 7,000 pound trip limit makes the trip a more cost-effective trip. So I would support this, but again, only if this was something that was compatible with what happens in federal waters.
Jason?
So there were no motions at the councils, and so I don't know that the proposed rule by NIMS will have any consideration of any changes from the 5,000-pound trip limit for this year, although it's obviously something the councils could entertain in the future.
Peter?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused about what would happen with this motion. You know, as I mentioned, we're in rulemaking right now. We've got, it's assumed that the council recommendations for the trip limits would be 5,000 pounds, consistent with what happened last year. And so that's what we're strongly considering. This would be inconsistent with that, and it's unclear whether this would be contingent upon our rulemaking in favor of this, I imagine. And so I'm not really sure what the commission would adopt in the event that we did not make rules that were consistent with this motion.
My response to Peter would be if this motion were to pass, the executive director or commission chairman would send a letter to NOAA basically saying this is what the commission adopted, and then NOAA, within the constraints of its rulemaking process, would either address it in one way or another, or maybe not address it. But at least on the record, they would have a letter recommending a slightly different strategy. After all, the commission is, in my own view, an equal partner with the two councils on this. So Doug Grout or someone else can comment on that. Thank you. Tony?
I think the language is a little bit confusing if someone were to read this in a press release with nothing else, no discussion, that we were going to a 6,000 trip limit. And so we may want to consider changing the language to say only if NOAA Fisheries were to increase. And then in a question to Peter, in order to consider this change from NOAA, would it be helpful if the commission sent a letter making that request and rationale for why we're making an increase request?
Peter?
Yes, I think that certainly the commission can adopt what they want to adopt, and we're in the middle of our rulemaking right now, trying to consider what the council has brought forward. So, if you sent a letter, we would consider it if we're still in our rulemaking process, looking forward on this. But the way that the motion is written, it says that it would only go forward if we did it in federal waters. So it's unclear. Maybe if you want to go with a 6,000 pound limit, I guess that would be the motion. But this is a contingency that it would only go in if we adopted it.
Discussion on that point? Anyone? Bill Adler?
Yes, I think that it probably should be done to the point where we say we're going to 6,000 pounds. And our partners, and I underline that, have our partners conform to us for a change. Thank you.
I've got Louis Danielson and Dan McKernan.
Yeah, the motion kind of changed a little bit. Is this just for the northern unit, or is this now a coast-wide 6,000 pound trip limit? Just a point of clarification. If it's coast-wide, I have comments.
I think the intent is, and the motion maker can correct this, the intent is that it would be a recommendation that goes to NIMS for a coast-wide 6,000 pound trip limit in federal waters, which currently you have a coast-wide 5,000 pound trip limit in federal waters. And any of the state boats, particularly in the Mid-Atlantic area that want to fish in state waters, simply drop their federal permit, and then, for instance, in the case of your state, they fish for dogfish and land 20,000 pounds on a trip. Correct that, Lewis, if I misinterpreted it.
No, that's my issue. Ours is we've got a 20,000 pound trip limit,
right?
And I don't want this to jeopardize that. That's an important component of our fishery.
This doesn't change it at all. I've got Dan McKernan.
To follow up on Tony's concerns, could this motion be reworked to be clearer before it's brought forward for a vote?
Tony's basically giving me the same advice that you're giving me, Dan. Let's just take like a 2-minute break and we'll reword the motion and then bring it back. Don't leave the room. All right, we have a revised motion that we'll put up on the board, and I'll just read it, and then I'll ask either the maker and seconder to agree to this or ask somebody to make it as a substitute, I guess. Move to recommend to NOAA Fisheries to adopt a 6,000 pound trip limit. If the trip limit is approved in federal waters, then set a 6,000 pound trip limit in the northern region, Maine through Connecticut. If the trip limit is not approved in federal waters, then a 5,000 pound trip limit will remain in the northern region, Maine through Connecticut. Motion by Mr. Reed and seconded by Mr. White. So let me ask the maker and seconder of the motion, do you agree to this perfection of the motion? Richie?
Yes.
Eric?
I agree with it, and hopefully, Louis, you'll agree with it, too.
Okay, so Louis, does this clarify what the intent is, getting back to the question you raised?
Yeah, and I support what Eric's trying to do 100%. I just am, and this clarifies my concern about what the original motion said. The only question I would have would be that if there is a 5,000-pound trip limit south of Connecticut in federal waters. So I'd defer to the other states, but it would seem to me that we would want to go to the 6,000 pounds in federal waters coast-wide, but accommodate Eric's request for a 6,000-pound trip limit in the northern states. That seems to me to be the most consistent way to do it, because otherwise, south of Connecticut, you got a 5,000-pound trip limit, and north, you've got a 6,000-pound trip limit. That would be the only concern I would have.
I have Rob and then Mike. To that point, please.
My understanding is that the 6,000-pound trip limit would be in federal waters, period, if National Marine Fisheries Service makes that change at some point.
I would add that's also my interpretation. Mike?
I was going to say the same thing. There's no line drawn through the federal waters that differentiates the north of Connecticut and south of Connecticut.
Okay, discussion on the motion. Anyone want to discuss the motion further? Peter Burns.
Yeah, just one more comment on this, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I just want to let you know that I'm going to appreciate you reworking the motion here. It looks like it would, if the trip limit is not approved in federal waters, then the 5,000-pound trip limit would remain. So, like I said, we've got two recommendations by the council that assumes that the trip limits would maintain at 5,000 pounds. So that I'm going to abstain on this because that's consistency that's not consistent with what the councils have recommended at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Any further discussion? Let me ask whether or not there's any objection to approving this motion as revised. Any objection? No objection. The motion stands approved as submitted. Next item on the agenda is election of a vice chairman. Richie White, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to nominate the most distinguished commissioner from the Commonwealth of Virginia, Rob O'Reilly.
Is there a second to that? Is it seconded? We got to get a different state to second it. Seconded by Steve Hines. The chair would, let's see, Pat Augustine, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, I'd like to submit your name as vice chair. No, I can't. No. Thank you very much, Richie White.
All right. Any objections to approving Robert O'Reilly as the vice chairman with acclamation and applause? You stand approved. Welcome to the barrel. Okay. Any other business? If not, the meeting stands adjourned.